Hi, I'm Megan Lee with CCM Magazine, sitting here with my guest, Craig Denison. He's a faith-driven entrepreneur. We need more of those. I love that title. Also, he started something called First15, which we're going to go into. It has stuff to do with worship series, podcasts. He's a writer. He's a speaker. He's a family man. He leads worship with his wife, Rachel. Craig, welcome.
Megan, thanks so much for having me. I'm excited for the conversation.
Absolutely. So I know you just came off of a long week and a long weekend, so I'm not going to play too hardball with you, but I want to start off by asking you about First 15 because it is super multidimensional and very, very special. I love how you've really pointed out the disparity between the personal relationship that people long for and maybe what they're actually experiencing doesn't necessarily align with that. Tell us how First 15 helps bridge that gap.
Yeah. First 15 is really, the story of First 15 is really my story. I grew up in a Christian home with a great pastor father. And then in college, I reached a real low point, and I didn't know what to do. It wasn't anything external that was wrong. Honestly, everything external looked great. And on the inside, I was hollow and I knew something was missing. And so having seen my parents, model their faith in a really authentic way at the house, I just kind of went to God first and gave him first shot. And God's only really talked to me this way a handful of times my entire life. But I got off stage. I wanted to do music with my career. And so I got off stage playing guitar at a worship service and prayed this really honest prayer. God, I don't know what to do, but I know you know what to do. Tell me what to do and I'll do it. And in that moment, I felt that I genuinely heard these words in my heart. It just needs to be you and me for a while. And I looked around like, that's so crazy. I know I just heard something. And what I knew what God was saying is I needed to stop seeking affirmation and affection in people around me. I needed to start finding myself in him. And so I started spending time alone with God. And that carried me dropping out of school, the one thing my parents told me not to do, into the band thing for a long season of writing, recording, showcasing for labels. And then out of that, back to Spanish class. All my friends were still touring. I'm in Spanish class. Felt like a terrible decision. Just following leadership in and out of these seasons until I started First 15 in 2014 and wanted to help other people find this rhythm of starting their day in worship and reading and prayer. And even that was like a real call. I would say most devotionals are someone's like summation of their life's work of writing. And so starting with a daily devotional felt really daunting. I fell in love with the process of guiding people to this place of meaningful connection with God. And that first year we had like 1 million people go to our website. And now we have around 2 million people that use First 15 every month as their resource for spending meaningful time alone with God.
So really creating that space to have that intimate relationship with God. And that is so relatable where everything looks, when you're talking about your time in college, when you're like, everything looks perfectly fine on the outside, but inside, I feel like personally that is totally relatable to me. And I know that is such a thing that happens, especially in our society. It's easy to kind of, put on the happy face, put on the nice Instagram pictures and have some other stuff, just like, even if it's not a big deal, it's just that relationship, that gap. So yeah, wonderful. So you do different things with First 15, and obviously it's a daily devotional. So you can spend that First 15 really getting to have that personal time with God. But you do multiple things. You do a worship series and you do a podcast. So tell me, what is the mindset behind that? Obviously you have a music background. So
Yeah, totally. Yeah. So really the goal of First 15 is to help people close that gap between wanting to abide in God and thrive with God and to seeing that gap get close where it comes to fruition every day in a meaningful way. And the way we started with this daily devotional, because if someone asked me that question of, I know I believe that God exists and he's real, he's even good and loving, but I don't feel like I'm connected to him. Like, what should I do? The first thing I would say is spend 15 minutes with him alone every morning and start your day that way. Tune your heart to that sound of his voice and that place of connection with him. He's already there. You don't have to even invite him to come. He's there. It's just about turning your heart towards him and becoming aware of the fact that he's there with you. And so we started with that, but there's so many other ways to help believers connect to God in a meaningful way. And worship for me is such a core spiritual discipline for that, where there's very few other ways that I can effectively really kind of put God at the center of my life, as singing about his character and his goodness and reminding myself of the reality of who he is somehow just just takes this knowledge I have about God from my head to my heart, and helps me connect with him in a way that honestly I find very few other disciplines help me do that. And so every day with First 15, we have a worship song. More and more of those are becoming original worship at our
I saw
background.
that. We can
Yeah.
actually talk about that a little bit because
I
I
would
love that.
love
I saw that you have some new releases this month. I think it was June 4th. And it looks like you're collaborating with different artists. So tell me more about that.
Absolutely. Yeah. The goal with First 15 was really that it was never just like Craig Denison and me and you and Jesus hanging out, but that it started with his daily devotional and was a guide to that place for you connecting with God. And I've always wanted to have original worship in there. There's so much good worship written for the weekend, but we really wanted to try to fill more of that space of worship for the weekday and helping worship be a regular practice among believers daily because of that value that it brings of taking our relationship from our head to our heart. And so we started writing and releasing original worship. That's worship for the weekday. And it's personal. It's produced in a way that is inviting. If you're just sitting there, with headphones on right in the beginning of the morning, it's not cymbals and synths kind of out in your face, but it's more inviting in terms of its production and its songwriting. And I knew that I couldn't write all the worship that we wanted to release. And there's so many gifted songwriters that are even spending a lot of time writing for the weekend. But I found when their personal life were processing their relationship with God through songwriting, and they didn't have a place to release that music necessarily. And so we wanted to be a place where we can be collaborative with songwriters, even vocalists and artists, if they're singing someone else's song or writing themselves, in addition to producers, mixing engineers, mastering engineers. So we had our first release called The Invitation a few months ago, and are now doing about a song a month that we're writing and producing, putting in First 15 for our audience to consume, and then actually putting this worship out through other platforms as well, just as a resource on its own.
That's super amazing. I have so many questions now, but just to let you all know, I listened to your podcast. I listened to the sound of what you're putting on, and it's so meditative. It's very, like you said, it opens up a part of you, it's that heart language almost. It can kind of just detach you from being so heady and get you in the heart, And so now I got questions about how you actually produce this stuff. So do you, now that I see you've got like a little studio, do you produce some of this, or do you have collaborators produce it for you, or do you just have pals in Texas who do it? But what do you do?
Oh man, there really is like a team of people now, which is such a gift. Even someone that helps me kind of drive First 15 forward every day, so I can spend most of my time creating content when I'm thinking First 15. And he has a phenomenal music background. He was on the road for like 10 years. His name is Josh Miller, and he was signed to a record deal across that tenure. And so he really manages a lot of the project. And we really do have a phenomenal team of people between. So I participate in songwriting, a little bit of production. I love to like pull some stuff out every now and then and throw some thoughts on there, and like a few thoughts in terms of mixes that come out. But Josh is really driving it every day. And there's a phenomenal team of people, from producers, musicians and artists together, vocalists together, to songwriters that are participating and sending in stuff, all the way to mixing and mastering engineers. So song a month right now, we're hoping to maybe expand that as we grow, because there's so much opportunity. We need worship every day for First 15. So
that
there's
is
really
a big to do, turning out a song a month. Yeah. Wow. The songwriting, and then the actual going through the whole process of making it available. And where can people find those besides obviously on I thought I saw that you guys are actually on Spotify and iTunes and stuff like that.
Yeah, we do distribute it through all the platforms. And so you can check out First 15 Worship on Spotify.
You guys are like First 15 Worship. It's like artist collaborative almost.
Really? Yeah, that's the goal for sure.
You said that your wife leads worship with you. Does she work on this content with you as well?
She does. Yeah. She has read like every First 15 before it goes out, which is a huge part of them being consumable for general public. Yeah. So she does that. She works with me. Actually, her desk is like right over here. So we work, this is my back like office in our backyard. So I can see my boys running around the house inside right now, with grandma's over until she gets home on her flight today. So yeah, she works with me every day. Phenomenal worship leader. Like she's singing on one of those tracks. Your Love Is All is a song that we co-wrote that she sings on. If you want to hear her voice, that's her on that one. Phenomenal. That's how we met, was doing music in college. So phenomenal worship leader, great writer. She gets to speak like fairly often as well. And she's trying to figure out exactly what all that means for her and what she like really wants to do, but she could do anything. She's super talented.
So you also, as if you're not already a jack of all trades and everything we've talked about so far, you also are putting out a book called Living Intentionally. And I mentioned to you when we first started to talk that what a wonderful, I saw that it's focused on mental and emotional health. What a wonderful piece to come out at the end of this crazy last 15 months. So tell me more about Living Intentionally and where we can find it or when it's going to be available.
Yeah, it started for me in the pandemic, where before the pandemic, I was, things have been scaling really fast and I was just overcommitted, as so many of us are. My two boys are 4 and 2 now. And so the process of family expansion, work expansion, just personal life expansion had me feeling like when I put my head down on my pillow every night, I knew I was exhausted, but how do I know that I moved the needle that day on things that really matter the most? And I thought it was just busyness. And then the pandemic hit and so many of those things like travel went away. And I still had that same feeling. I was still finding things to busy myself with and distract myself with. And so I realized maybe there's something more core here going on, where I'm more prone towards busyness and distraction and struggle to really find intentionality in my daily life, no matter what's happening around me. And so maybe I need to kind of take the reins back here and get alone with God and figure out, God, what are you really calling me to and what really does matter? And how do I go all in on those things and be able to be empowered to say no to the other things? And that started for me kind of a research project. And I found this old way of thinking called a rule of life, which has kind of had a resurgence in recent years, but was popularized by St. Benedict in the 4th century. And it's hilarious to me that monks who had cloistered themselves and had literally given their entire life to reading and prayer and study and practicing the presence of God still felt like they were prone towards distraction and busyness in the 4th century without iPhones in their pocket and all the other things we have today. And so I found this rhythm called a rule of life that basically just says, no, find the most important areas of your life, your relationships. And for I had immediate consumption of this, your spirituality, your health, and what would be a set of decisions or rules you'd create for yourself that would help you achieve the goals that you want in life in those areas. And then how do you build the rhythms and practices that support those goals? And ends up with just basically a basic framework. That's what a lot of this book is it's part book, part journal to help people actually process these areas of life and figure out what God's calling them to and walk away with a set of decisions that say, okay, if my boys are 4 and 2, one of my decisions is I want to try to get 20 minutes of focused time with each of them individually every day. I want to sit on the ground and play trucks with my 2-year-old, my 4-year-old, we wrestle and play and race around the house. And I know that for 40 minutes at least every night, it's just them time. And on the weekends, it's more. And that simple decision as an everyday practice really moves the needle in those relationships that matter most to me and came out of this personal processing. And I'm hoping this book helps other people that may be feeling the same struggle of busyness and distraction find intentionality that helps them achieve this life that they feel called to.
Yeah. Wow, you sound eclectic, introspective, creative, and then you just invite everybody to join in on the journey with you, which is wonderful. It's a way to share all of your gifts. Really, really wonderful. So where can we find Living Intentionally?
Yeah, I think the best place to go would be to our website, first15.org. There we have a bookstore with Living Intentionallys on there. And then our daily devotional is printed as well. So if you want to kind of set your device aside and don't want to consume it with our app or podcast or whatever, you can actually get printed devotional books there too. But that's probably the best place to pick it up.
Oh man, you still do print. Man after my own heart. So the last thing I want to ask you, and I actually kind of feel like I already know the answer to the crazy question I was going to ask is, you do First 15, and now you're expanding, or I think you are in the process of expanding something called Primero Quince, which is the Spanish version of First 15. And my question was, so are you the one speaking in Spanish, or do you hire somebody? But then you mentioned that you went and have a Spanish background. So now I'm like, oh my gosh, does he speak Spanish too? Tell us, Craig.
No, it's not me. So we're launching a podcast for it. So it's the content of First 15 that we had a brilliant translator in South America version so that people in different dialects could consume it and feel like it's close enough to how they speak Spanish, which is a real challenge, I think, in translating. So I didn't even translate the content. We had a professional translator do that. Great connection. conversation. And then literally the team went out and said, we need to find the Spanish Craig. I didn't know this when I got into the space. My voice is just my voice, but apparently we get a ton of comments in the podcast about it, where people think the narrator is just soft spoken. We had a lady the other day literally say in a comment that she leaves the podcast running for her cats because they find it calming. So I didn't realize I had a ministry to cats through the podcast, but apparently I do. And so apparently the team's found Spanish Craig, who's going to be soft-spoken and going to be very appealing to Spanish-speaking cats all over the world. And so someone else is voicing the podcast from.
So you're on. So did you find the Spanish Craig, or are we still looking?
Apparently we did. I actually need to go listen. They just sent me like a test of it the other day.
You
I need to go
have
check
such
it out.
a soothing voice, and it goes with that music so well. And it does. It feels like you're just like a breath out, and you're just. I really, I get why the cats love you, Craig.
Thanks. Yeah, I wouldn't have known that was, it's a challenge when there's not a microphone. It's a struggle at meals, just in general life. It's what, it's like a thorn in my side, having my soft, still voice. Because I feel like I'm shouting and people are like, Craig, I literally cannot hear you. So
you just need what are those things called? Do you need one of those speakers to carry around with you?
I literally should carry a megaphone all the time.
I don't like to speak loudly either, and do not change your voice because you're soothing cats and believers everywhere. So as Craig mentioned, you can go to First15. Well, you can go to First15Worship.com, also just First15.com, correct?
That's correct.
And when you spell it out, it's first and then 15.
That's right.
Yeah. So just so you know, it's not all spelled out. And yeah, we really enjoyed having you on here. We're so excited for all that you do, helping people through all of your multiple talents. And best of luck going forward with the rest of this year, helping us all pull out of, sometimes our slump of just kind of cruising on autopilot in life. So we really appreciate you, Craig. Thanks for coming on.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me.
Yay. Is there anything else that you want to add that you wish that we touched on?
That was great. Nope. You got through you hit all the high points so fast. That was great.
Sorry, but you were going great. I loved it. And I'm like not surprised that cats love I'm really not surprised about the cat thing, because I thought the same thing when I heard it. So it's a regular thing that your voice is just super soothing there, sir.
I literally was like on the floor crying. I was laughing so hard. We also got a comment on our app, like early days of launching it, where some kid said the subject line for the review was help me, I think. And then the body copy was, my mom made me do this. Like this kid, some mom was like, you're doing First15 every day. Kid not only just is looking for help from anyone, it's just anyone in the universe, like reaches out through the app store review to seek help because his mom's making him do First15. It's amazing.
You're like, just bear it. No, that's not true.
So funny.
Well, Thank you so much, Craig. And like I said, good luck with the rest of everything. And I will keep in touch with you.
Sounds good.